Is your business protected against the threat of malicious litigation and frivolous lawsuits? Are you sinking company profits into marketing campaigns that do nothing to contribute to the growth of your business? Bottled Business Sense provides practical business perspectives that uniquely emphasize both legal and media marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. Now, whether you're trying to provide a startup business with some level of stability or an established business with foolproof asset and estate protection, or simply attempting to get a better return for your business marketing dollars, Bill Bernard and Rick Moscoso will expose potential pitfalls to ensure the security and growth of your business, free from unwanted expense and the threat of litigation. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection tools equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Let's join Bill and Rick for today's Bottled Business Sense show.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. here on the Bottled Business Sense show. I'm Rick Moscoso, one of your co-hosts this morning. And on the other side, we have Mr. Bill Bernard, and Bill is going to talk about the annual maintenance for LLCs. So before we get into that topic, let's welcome Bill to the show. How are you doing today, Bill?
Doing great, Rick. Thanks. And yeah, we're going to talk about strictly LLCs because there's this, you might recall in past shows, I've always said, well, LLC requirements are a little less strict than corporations. And sometimes people choose LLCs for that reason. But I've always been one that said you need to do the proper maintenance to make sure to not be able to pierce that corporate veil. I call it a corporate veil, LLC veil. Let's call it an entity veil. And various things can pierce the veil. And if you don't have proper records or you don't keep proper records, that veil can be pierced in the same manner as it can be if you commit fraud. So when I go through some of these things, I think it'll be a little more clear, and hopefully everybody who has an LLC like yourself will pay close attention and make sure that they jot down some of these notes. So let's talk about the fact that, candidly, there are more and more cases of where limited liability companies are pierced in a lawsuit. And what happens when an LLC is pierced or the veil of any entity is pierced, Rick?
Yeah, well, then you leave your personal assets exposed.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Now, it doesn't have to be that way, and it doesn't have to be expensive. In fact, it can actually be easy to keep your LLC in compliance. Let me first talk about briefly some of the benefits of keeping it in compliance before we get into some of the specifics on how to keep it in compliance. You obviously can increase your audit protection with the IRS. You can get more tax write-offs. You can better build your business and increase sales. And of course, you have the asset protection that you've always thought you've had. Because if you keep your LLC in compliance, it's going to be a LLC for real. And when you have an LLC, it looks much better for your business than if you're operating as a sole proprietor, in my opinion, and I think in the opinions of a lot of other experts. Small business owners, if you have an LLC, you should do the following every year or face having no asset protection or even having your entity, your LLC in this case, terminated by the state. So think about that for a second. So here, let's get into this. Let's dive into it. Have a complete formation of the company with all supporting documents. Make sure you have all of your supporting documents. Don't ever misplace them. Keep them in a notebook. Your articles of formation, your buy and sell agreement, if you have one, your operating agreement, which you should have if you're more than a single member LLC. Hold annual meetings and record them in your corporate book. So I'm going to number these. 1, complete formation of the company with all supporting documents at a place you can easily access it and at your place of business. 2, hold annual meetings and record what goes on at the annual meetings in your corporate notebook. 3, renew your entity with the proper Secretary of State. In California, it's every 2 years. You got to file your statement of information. And 4, file any necessary state and federal tax filings, including quarterly payroll reports, So those 4 things are absolutely critical. So one might ask the question, Rick, what type of formation record should you have for an LLC? That would be point number 1 we just mentioned, right? Well, let's not use a sheet of paper that you get off of LegalZoom, okay? It's much more than that. If you don't have all the pieces and parts, you're going to have a major problem with a potential lawsuit. Even the IRS, if they come to audit you, are going to ask for these documents. Banks will ask for these documents. Future partners will, or future members of the LLC will ask for these documents if you want to bring them in. And even landlords, when you lease out a place of business, are going to ask for these documents. So let's go through the pieces. I've mentioned the 4 items that you really need to hone in on. Now let's break those 4 items down into the specifics of the documents that you need to keep. Remember, item number 1 was a complete formation of the company with all supporting documents. Item number 2, hold annual meetings and record them in a corporate book. Number 3, renew your entity with the Secretary of State in California every 2 years by filing your statement of information. And number 3, file all your necessary state and federal tax filings. Keep those 4 things in mind. Now let's take number 1, complete formation of all the supporting documents in place. Here are the documents. I mentioned them briefly a minute ago. Here they are. Articles of organization filed with the state. 2, operating agreement between the members and the manager. 3, organizational resolution of the members. That means the recordation of whatever happens in your meetings. 4, your corporate book. Keep everything in that corporate book. 5, membership certificates and seal, where you stamp your official documents, and you have certificates that show what units are owned by each member. And number 5, your EIN IRS application that gives your LLC its particular EIN number that you have to file your LLC return with, your state and federal return. Remember, we're not talking about the fact that an LLC is a pass-through taxable entity. It is, and you file your separate personal return based on the income you make from your LLC, but still your LLC has to have its own EIN number for filing its own tax return with the state when you file your personal return as well at the end of the year. Now let's go into number 2, which I said was hold annual meetings and record them in a corporate book. The general purpose of these meetings and minutes, Rick, is to commemorate resolutions that authorize the various acts taken by the company when you have your meetings and the goals that you want to have for the next coming year or even longer. They should be typed up by the business owners. It could be handwritten, but it'd be nice to have them typed up. But remember, the important thing to do with them is to create documentation and put them in your corporate book. When you hold your annual member and manager meetings, write down things like what sales were for what took place for the prior years, what items you purchased for the company, what items you sold on behalf of the company, who you hired as employees, if any, and who you fired, if anybody. All of these things have to be documented in the corporate notes that you have at your annual meeting each year. And most importantly, put down your plans for the future. So whatever business you conducted or you plan to conduct are put down in these organizational resolutions so you can easily refer to them. And so anybody looking at your books, such as future members, such as the IRS, such as the state, can look at this and say, yeah, your LLC is in place. This isn't a phony operation. You're not defrauding anybody. You're not operating really as a sole proprietor. You are doing everything you're supposed to do. And the goals are very simple. You strengthen the corporate veil, and of course, you maintain asset protection. The documentation you provide for these meetings actually commemorates and memorializes your goals and objectives for your business. So you have an added benefit there. Remember, it's always good to write things down and refer to them. It also provides a structure for tax planning and establishes good bookkeeping procedures so you know what your tax goals might be for the coming year. It creates a great reason for tax-deductible trips, at least annually. You can memorialize the trips you've taken and the expenses incurred in those trips. It increases communication between various business owners. You can always refer back to these notes and resolutions as to what business was conducted with outside companies, for example. And if your company or your LLC involves family members, it teaches them how to operate the business. So all of this stuff is critically, critically important. So before I get on to the last part of this show, let me recap. The 4 things you need to remember is have a complete formation of the company with all supporting documents and keep it at your place of business. 2, hold annual meetings and record them in your corporate book. 3, renew your entity with the proper Secretary of State by filing your Statement of Information. In California, that's every 2 years. And 4, file any necessary state and federal tax filings and quarterly payroll reports. We mentioned those 4 critical items. We mentioned as part of item number 1, where you're keeping the formation of the company documents in place, make sure in that item number 1, you have the following 6 items: articles of organization, operating agreement, organizational resolution of members, what meetings are recorded. 4, your corporate book. 5, your membership certificate and seals showing the ownership. And 6, your EIN number for your LLC. And when you then go to do your organizational resolutions, which I just mentioned, make sure you put down things like your assets that were sold, assets that were purchased, who you hired, who you fired, what your plans are for the future to grow the company, what changes any kind of change that you're going to make in the company in the future. And all of this stuff then strengthens that corporate veil and provides the asset protection that you need. It provides goals that you can refer to, either within the members themselves or with other companies and things that you've discussed with other companies. It provides the basis for tax-deductible trips and any other tax deductions you want to take for the company. And it provides a basis for increased communication in general between members. Now, having said all of that, what does it mean if you have your entity canceled or terminated by the state? We don't really want to discuss this, but we have to, because if you reach that point, it's probably because you haven't had a good lawyer on board helping you along the way. And it might be also because you're a little lazy yourself, right? I mean, let's be honest. Every state is different, of course, but the far majority of states require an annual report to stay in good standing. As I said, in California, it's every 2 years. If you do not file that with the state, it automatically terminates your LLC many times without any prior notice. So don't depend on the state of California to come and tell you, by the way, your LLC is going to be terminated. If you didn't file your statement of information, you may or may not get notice, but if you don't comply, you're going to be terminated. Next, any entity who brings an action or any other party who brings an action against you is going to be able to bring an action against you personally, and you lack any standing on behalf of the LLC to bring any action against somebody, because now you don't have an LLC. So if your LLC has a good cause of action against somebody who hasn't paid you, you're not going to be able to do that because your LLC is no longer in existence. So how are you going to go after the guy who owes you money? So all of these results, by way of cancellation, automatically include the cancellation and invalidity of any contracts that you have with other companies. How about this one? Contracts or agreements that you may have between other members of your LLC are all defunct because of this now dissolved LLC that was dissolved by the state. So you must understand the rules of your Secretary of State and when you have to file your statement of information. And remember that you better put it on your calendar so you get reminders in order to do that. Or better yet, hire a good business lawyer, which you should always have on board in your company anyway, just like an accountant and a marketing guy. Those are the three disciples, I say, for your company, and have them have it on their calendar. So if they don't do it, you can sue them for malpractice. I mean, you don't want to have to sue anybody. That's the whole point of this. Keep your LLC in compliance. Don't believe the baloney you hear. Well, S corporations and C corporations only require compliance. Technically, that may be true to some extent, but you can see in terms of reality, if you don't keep your LLC up to date in the same manner as you do an S corp or a C corp, you could suffer dire consequences, not only by way of cancellation by the state that you formed your LLC in, but by way of the contracts you may have with other companies that you're now unable to recover on by way of your negligence by not doing what you're supposed to do. It's really that simple, Rick.
Well, I think you've laid it out pretty plain and simple. I know from experience, having Bill handle my LLC, I have my handy dandy book right here.
There you go. I like it. Show that again, Rick. Show that again.
I have this.
That's the book that I give my clients, and in there it is. It's got all the corporate documents, or I should say, in this case, LLC documents, business documents. It's tabbed with all the specific categories of all the things you need, and if you have a lawyer like you should, you can turn that over to your lawyer. I have a copy of that. Rick keeps the original. It's up to you how you want to arrange it. You want to keep originals or copies. But either way, an original or copy must be kept at your place of business because members of your LLC, other members, are entitled to review that when they want to. Right. If you're subpoenaed for those documents, you better have them at your place of business so you can provide copies should you unfortunately be involved in some sort of litigation.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know personally as a business owner, I did not want to have to deal with the minutia of researching myself, going to LegalZoom, and then doing it wrong. So,
yep.
So, if you're in need of forming an LLC or updating your LLC or anything like that, or any entity, please reach out to Bill. He's the best, and he will keep you pointed in the right directions to make sure that you are protected and maintain that corporate veil around your personal assets.
And I say this with regard to trust clients as well, Rick, because as you know, I do estate planning. Mm-hmm. You go to LegalZoom, you get something done, or you go to one of those do-it-yourself sites, but they don't follow up. You have a business attorney, they follow up with you, they keep you up to date, they amend your trust. They make sure your LLC statement of information is filed. They tell you what amendments have to be done, if any. They keep a track of your business so they know what your business needs. That's why you pay a lawyer. That's why you have a lawyer, because the lawyer does the bulk of the work so you can go ahead and do what it is you have a profession in. You don't want to be bothered. It's funny. A good example of this is I was at the doctor's office yesterday, and he wanted to make a bunch of future appointments for me. And he kept saying like 3 or 4 times when he said, this is what you have to have done. Go ahead and make sure up front, the lady up front knows. Make sure my gal up front knows. Make sure she knows. Make sure she knows, over and over, right? So you go up. I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that I'm in dire need of medical care, but these are just minor tests that you have to have done. Maintenance, just like LLC maintenance, you have doctor and medical maintenance, and everything is handled by that person so the doctor can practice medicine. Now that's an extreme example, but the point that I'm trying to drive home is you delegate these things to the professionals who are good at doing it, so you can then do what you're good at being a professional at. Really that simple.
Yep, it is.
So where can they get a hold of us, Rick? So just in case they need us.
Yeah, well, first of all, if you need to reach out and speak to a good business attorney, obviously Bill is your contact here on this episode or on this show. His contact information is below the video. You can also find us on social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and also on YouTube. And please reach out to Bill if you have any questions in regards to this particular topic or any entity topic, because he can certainly help you out, steer you in the right direction.
And I must say that the show has been great. I mean, I do get an awful lot of calls, and I'm very serious. And when I do, I'm glad to spend a few minutes with somebody. Some people turn out to be clients. Other people just need a couple of touch-up, basics, and I'm happy to do that. And people call and they want to know a couple of things, and they always refer to the show and finding us on Google and being able to go ahead and watch the show and then follow up with some questions if need be.
Yeah, that's great. Also, you can find us on our website. I almost forgot that, but you can find us on our website and watch any related topics that you wish in regards to marketing and to business law. Or even trust topics. And you can find us on bottledbusinesssenseshow.com. So we have a whole host of several years of episodes, variety of different information. So visit us online.
And remember, folks, you're going to find 3 major areas of business law on our show. It's going to be, of course, employment law, estate planning, and it's going to be corporate and LLC formation. That to me are the 3 critical elements that comprise any business lawyer's duties, because eventually, after forming a company or an entity to protect your assets, you're going to hire employees if your company grows, and you're going to need an estate plan for your personal assets eventually, because most business owners who come to me eventually end up in wanting that as well. And you should have that. So in addition to the Bottle Business Sense show site, you can also go to wfblegalconsulting.com, and there's a drop-down box to watch the Bottle Business Sense show there. So those are 2 sites right there. And then if you're looking for an estate plan that has a phenomenal price, if I do say so myself, go to PYE365.com. That's PYE365.com. So I hope this was helpful to everybody, and we'll continue to bring this free benefit to you guys as long as we can stay healthy. Right, Rick?
That's absolutely right. So we love doing it, and hopefully everyone can benefit from the information that we provide here. So with that, Bill, thank you again for this great episode. You can watch us right after this broadcast on the replay on YouTube or at bottledbusinesssenseshow.com. And with that, we'll sign off, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Okay, sounds good. Take care, everybody.